We're going over System Concepts, Article 32, Egoism in the Work, Part 3. The spiritual society represents the corporation that mainly deals with dissemination of Kabbalah materials to others. It constantly awakens the importance of love of friends between its members. The society sees humanity as lost children who need the light of Kabbalah to reform them accordingly. They all adhere to the single teacher of the society and their appointed managers. Connection desires. In the spirit phase, we normally feel uplifted and confident. Transitioning to a root phase is felt as a sudden loss of that confidence. We have to make a decision about aligning to the next phase. For example, when we transition to phase 2, spiritual society, we feel that we need to align ourselves to their values and have a separation from our previous ideals in phase 1. Here's a quote. We have gathered here to establish a society for all who wish to follow the path and method of Bala Sulam, the way by which to climb the degrees of man and not remain as a beast, as our sages said, Yevamot 61a, about the verse, "And you, my sheep, the sheep of my pasture, are men." And Rashbi said, "You are called men, and idol worshippers are not called men." From the article Purpose of Society 1, The Social Writings by Baruch Shalom Halevi Ashlag. When we arrive to the spiritual society, we are at the beginning surprised by their positive behavior. They welcome us with open arms and lay some ground rules. For example, the connection between us should be general. We are only meant to express ourselves in a positive manner. We do not talk about our internality, and from love of friends we reveal the Creator between us. The rules seem a little weird at first, but soon we see the logic and the framework. We start to interact and learn that the problem is that we are trying to receive instead of bestowing to one another. Since the Creator only has the quality to bestow, we should try to bestow like Him in the quality of reception. These desires for mutual positive interaction are called connection desires. They're considered the unformed desires of the spiritual society, phase 2.1. Mutual guarantee desires. When we mature in the second phase of the spiritual society, we learn to take responsibility for each other. This is where we study the importance of mutual guarantee. We normally take a position in the society to help with the management of the group or role in dissemination of the wisdom to others outside of the society. And here's a quote. Pain vises pleasure in self-reception. Thus, when we examine and thoroughly grasp the above plan, we will see that the whole difficulty lies in changing our nature from a desire to receive for ourselves to a desire to bestow upon others, since those two things deny one another. At first glance, the plan seems imaginary, as something that is above human nature. But when we delve deeply into it, we will find that the contradiction from reception for oneself to bestow upon others is nothing but a psychological matter, because in fact we do bestow upon others without benefiting ourselves. This is so because although self-reception manifests itself in us in various ways, such as property, possessions for pleasure of the heart, the eye, the palate, etc., all those are defined by one name, pleasure. Thus the very essence of reception for oneself that a person desires is nothing but the desire for pleasure. And now imagine that if we were to collect all the pleasures one feels during the 70 years of life and put it on one side, and collect all the pain and sorrow one feels on the other side, if we could see the outcome, we would prefer not to have been born at all. And if this is so, then what does one receive during one's life? If we assume that one obtains 20% of pleasure during his lifetime and 80% of pain, then if we put them one opposite the other, they would still remain 60% of suffering unrewarded. But this is all private calculation, as when one works for oneself. But in a global calculation, the individual produces more than he takes for his own pleasure and sustenance. Thus, if the direction were to change from self-reception to bestowal, the individual will enjoy the entire produce he produces without much pain. From the article Peace in the World by Bala Sulam. The trademark of the spiritual society is altruism without self-benefit. We learn to raise the importance of the friends above our personal calculation. These desires for mutual responsibility are called mutual guarantee desires. They are considered the chaotic desires of the spiritual society, phase 2.2. Each degree is layered on top of the previous degrees, and attention must be balanced by giving each degree their required importance. All the phases up to this point are experienced passively without any required participation or knowledge from the individual to advance. And here's the first workshop question. Why is the society needed for advancement? Cedric.
I don't know, perhaps because it gave us connection, and through connection we can advance.
Jeffrey.
Yeah, many reasons. It's the foundation of our environment, and from that, you'll get our support mechanisms and all the other things, and we'll learn all the precepts and ground steps to enable our growth. It's the foundation we'll ultimately stand upon.
Maria.
I think it serves to create the necessary tension in order for one to feel external bestowing as a deficiency in order for us to advance.
Mary.
Yes, we need to be with like-minded people on the same path, and we need someone else to try to bestow to.
Moshe.
I would say that it serves many reasons. First of all, it's a stepping stone into advancement. It's just part of the process. You have to go through the spiritual society. And also I would say is that while you're in the spiritual society, to kind of get sort of discernments about, concepts, I guess, and, they might be dirty concepts or clean concepts, but either way, you're getting some discernments through the spiritual society, and your job is to basically discern it and make it yours and internalize it, and have more active participation on your part through the spiritual society.
Robin.
I think we need to basically reorganize our Kli, and by going through the spiritual society phase to try to bestow, and we can't. It redirects us. It refocuses our will to receive, and we have to go through that stage.
The society is more of like a passive experience, and the idea is what we mostly get from the society is like the core knowledge. Normally, in, let's say, Bnei Baruch, we get Bala Sulam, Rabash, Rav Lightman, and what that does, it provides us a foundation that on top of that foundation we can innovate. The idea in the society itself, you're not meant to innovate. It's designed to be a framework. It's designed to be like the foundation. And then in the phase 3 in the group, that's where you actually do the innovations. The second question, why do we need mutual guarantee? Cedric.
I'll skip this one, please.
Jeffrey.
It builds the integrity of the experience, that we're going to have a sincere desire to be of assistance to our fellow society members. This is going to integrate us totally, and it does work. I do feel unification with many, many members of the BB squad. Thank you.
Maria.
I think it depends what we use it for. I can envision mutual guarantee or this concept of our root to say, oh, well, everybody is going to be bestowing to me, so externally, so that's a plus for me. My ego likes that. But mutual guarantee, and once we're already cleaning concepts, is we're each other's mirror, so to say. So we need each other's discernments. We need to be independent of each other to be gaining, to be cleaning our concepts. Basically, we need to be each other's detergent in order to have a cleaner view, or yeah.
Mary.
Like Maria was saying, we need each other to for discernment and to share in this, keeping each other on the path and focused, and to scrutinize articles with, and to try to give outside of ourselves, and create this going through the phase to create this environment through trying to experience giving, trying to experience bestowal.
Moshe.
And that's exactly it. It's trying to experience, practice bestowal. And, just like anything else, to get onto higher degrees or higher levels of perception, or in anything you do, you have to sort of go through what works and what doesn't work. And mutual guarantee serves a purpose. It can give pleasure, egoistic feeling, I guess, but it can also serve as a purpose of saying, okay, I cannot bestow in my will to receive. And through that mutual guarantee, you can reveal that you cannot bestow in your will to receive, and that's how it serves its purpose.
Robin.
I agree with all these. I think it also begins to orient us to that we are one collective soul, even though we're not connected properly or anything like that. But it does. It is that concept, and we are striving to attain it in a phase 2 way.
Mutual guarantee is sort of like tested in the society, but its main goal is actually to prepare you to meet with friends that afterwards you're going to build a phase 3 group out of, and you're going to be cleaning concepts with. But the idea is you can't clean concepts if you're not going to have that mutual guarantee between the members of the group. So you need sort of that confidence that people stick around before you can trust them to clean concepts with them. So the idea is that mutual guarantee is like the preparation for cleaning desires, which is 2.4, so that when you're building that group, you have a strong foundation of connection layered with mutual guarantee. And then, because they're going to stick around, then you can actually start cleaning concepts with them on a daily or weekly basis. Third question, how do we balance the attention needed to each layer of our desires? Cedric.
I'll pass.
Jeffrey.
Yeah, would you please repeat that question?
How do we balance the attention needed to each layer of our desires?
Yeah, the layer part's got me a little baffled, but it's the intention should always be focused on the goal, which is our end of correction, and the adhesion, total adhesion, and absolute internal power. If our desires are not for this goal, then they're counterproductive. So that's what I try to do, is keep my intentions aligned with the desires. Thank you.
Maria.
I would say it is with acceptance that the layers are needed. In other words, sometimes when we're on one layer, we try to either reject the other one or not recognize that it's also needed. But I think we can give the attention when we realize that we need them both, and then know from which one to look at and how to correct it. And that's one of the reasons why the group can help and reinforce the correct habit, if you will.
Mary.
By being clear and in what we value, and by staying focused on the goal, and recognizing, examining our desires, why we have them, if they're useful for advancement, and also by paying attention to the different levels, different phases in our lives, how much attention we give to the different levels, and by staying integrated in the group, because you're always reminded of the levels within the society.
Moshe.
Well, obviously, every level is important. Every desire is important, and they shouldn't be neglected. That's number one. Number two, it's about prioritization and prioritizing what's most important for you at that current moment, and basically, putting your focus and spending time on that desire for that moment, and basically constantly checking yourself, aligning yourself to whatever you really need, and just making sure you don't really neglect anything, and kind of basically use all the parts together to create like a perfect system for advancement.
Robin.
Yeah, every layer of our desires is important for us to be to become the creator. And if we don't have attention and separation and focus on the goal, first of all, but also maintaining the importance of the different levels and layers within our desires, then we have to do that so our perception becomes clearer and clearer as we advance.
First of all, if a certain phase sort of like shows us like warning signs and requires attention, of course we have to give it. The question is, what do you do, let's say, if you have free time? So the idea is that if you have free time, it's best to spend it on higher degrees, but you have to sort of know the flow of the lower degrees, like, for example, food. So you know your sort of food cycle when you need food, so you don't wait until you're in the middle of the street and suddenly hungry. You can pre-plan and say, oh, okay, I'm going to be hungry in an hour, so I'll bring some food with me and stuff like that. The same thing with a family. You can sort of make a schedule when the family needs attention and give it to them and keep that going. And if they need, special or specific attention at the time, you can give it. But the idea is that you can sort of plan your life that that the lower phases are taken care of, so that they don't have to say, hey, take care of me. While with the higher desires, they normally don't have any kind of warning signs anyway. So you have to make sure that you give them the attention even if they're not requesting it. What do you all think of the article?
I think it's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I couldn't find my pointer, but yeah, it's absolutely straightforward, and it's what do you call foundational. Clarifies the phase 2 group.
And I like that it explains and that it's it's a stepping stone, and it's part of the normal progress of development.
Yeah, I liked it too. I get more out of it every time I hear it or read it, and I got a lot out of this one this time. So I liked it.
Well, like I say, it does show that you're trying to bestow while still in the state of reception, and that's the difference. And since I've passed a barrier, I can say I am in the state of bestowal. It's as you say, it's a state. It's not the action.
Jeffrey, when you look back and you see like the concept that you had of bestowal when you were in phase 2, like, do you see the differences?
Oh yeah, it's night and day. It's maturity, like you say, putting everything on the scale of maturity, rather than good, bad, and stuff is exactly how a very useful way to perceive everything. It's because as we were saying, we had some guests from phase 2 here the other day, and you could see the immaturity, the unclean concepts, so. And this is the greatest thing. It's our perceptions are growing, and that's the whole key. This has, I think, been a very successful experiment, prototype development here. We got a ways to go, but I think we're at about 100 videos now, too, aren't we?
Very close.
Very close. So it's a great deal of substance here, and it's working. But I'm stuck in that phase 1 right now, so I don't know.
After that.
I want to get to the modulation, the development stuff. You know,
Yeah,
but
that's
like I
often
said,
the
I
process.
was totally drained. Like at the end of the day, I didn't have a speck of anything left in me, because it's been the tension for the past year or so. You know, right? And I had to lay down. You know, just like you're saying, you're exhausted right now too. This will happen to you. I hit the point. So I said, I'm taking today off, and I loafed all morning, and here I am. Got videos downloaded for tonight's pleasure. And the Tika series is just coming along beautifully. That's
One of the questions that I sometimes get is it actually needed to be physically in the society? And the answer to that is no. And the reason is because um, the spiritual society phase is required, but it's important to understand what is actually like part of that phase. So, for example, I've seen people that advance. They need a spiritual society phase within them. But that spiritual society phase can be implemented, for example, by listening to, let's say, Rav Lightman's lessons and reading his books. So, for example, I've had people that advance using a phase 2 by just listening to his lessons, and other people that advance by just reading his books. They don't even listen to his current lessons. They read the books which are basically archived lessons. So the idea is that phase 2 is still needed in the person, but it doesn't require interaction with other people. And the idea is that at the beginning of the spiritual society in Bnei Baruch, they didn't have, like even 5 years ago, they didn't have workshops. They basically were sit together in a room and would be watching Rav's lessons. So the idea is that the interaction with them was between them was very minimal. So what is a requirement for the spiritual society phase does not actually require actual interaction with people. It requires, though, to have a broad knowledge sort of being thrown at you, sort of that you're learning very authentic materials like Bala Sulam and Rabash and Rav Lightman. And the idea is that by absorbing that general material that still doesn't have, it's not going to like focus you on the goal or anything that you're going to do in phase 3, but it's going to give you like a general overview of the knowledge base. And sort of on top of that, then phase 3 can start focusing you on specifics. But if you don't have that general overview, then pointing you in specific directions isn't going to make sense, because you're not going to have this sort of this picture that then you can focus on the details.
So the discernments you make don't have to come from that society. They can be anywhere, and you just apply them to what you're learning or where. Yeah.
So you could say the spiritual society is like a general overview of the wisdom, and then you've got phase 3 with the group where they're going to do specifics in the wisdom. So they're going to focus you, how does this relate to your advancement? Phase 2 doesn't deal with your advancement. Phase 2 deals with the wisdom and how it sort of applies to people. So you're going to have, for example, people learning in Kabbalah, let's say centers, let's say Berg, they're going to deal with the wisdom more related to the wisdom in itself and not have an application to people. For example, there's many Kabbalah places where they learn Kabbalah, but they apply it to religious sort of applications. So they're not applying it to people, they're applying it to the things you do with your hands and legs, to the rituals of religion. So the idea is in phase 2, what they do is they take Kabbalah, which you got in 1.4, and they apply it to people. They apply it on, this is how it's going to apply to your interaction with people, to know what is your desires, what is their desires, and that interaction between them, where you're not going to correct them, and you're not going to correct yourself, you're going to correct the relationship between us. And that is what makes a phase 2 spiritual society, is that they take the Kabbalah material, but they give it a spin on people. Then phase 3 takes the same wisdom and upgrades it from people to advancement.
I think they do achieve, though, a cohesion, though. They're a cohesive unit, and it leads to the vulnerability concept, which is so important, But like you say, they deliberately stunt their advancement, by not discussing inner states. And I just thought I saw a quote from Rav or Baha Salam about doing that, such a thing, disclosing your inner states.
So the idea is in spiritual setting in phase 2, the goal is not to advance. The goal, is to connect between people and disseminate the wisdom. So the idea is that you're disseminating from phase 2 to phase 1. And in phase 2, you're keeping this very general connection. And the idea is not to involve the ego. In phase 2, the idea is you're going above the ego, you're not involving the ego. And therefore, that's why you're not going to share states with each other. Because once you share states, that's already ego involved. You're getting some sort of feedback on your state. That means you're getting feedback to your ego. So the idea is that in phase 2, they just want to keep it general so that there's none of that response to the ego saying, where am I? The whole idea in phase 2 is to keep you in a state where you don't ask, where am I? Since you have no parameters that you can actually anchor yourself to and align yourself to. In phase 3, when you have a touch of egoism starting to be activated, then it makes perfect sense that you start sharing your states, to start getting sort of feedback to your ego to say, where are you, what's your next phase, and how you actually advance.
I lost the connection for a second, but is that why it takes so long, or doesn't happen often, maybe not often enough, that people don't come to a point where they just realize I can't give, because there's not the ego involved in the ego, so there's not that drive to advance and measure your advancement and see some results, and that's why that it's hard for people to come to the point where they realize they're not where they want to be because the ego isn't involved.
It would be like trying to figure out how much money you have in the bank, but when you ask the bank how much money you have, they won't give you an answer. So you're putting money in, you're taking money out, but you don't really know how much money you actually have in your bank account. And that's how it is in phase 2 in the spiritual society. You have no way to gauge your progress. So if you can't ask somebody else where they are, and it's not that, you can try to ask, it's not going to help. They don't have any phase numbers. They don't have any ways to actually know where they are anyway. So that's why it's futile to ask them, where you are in your advancement, because that's not what they're dealing with. Phase 3 actually gives you phases and say, this is this and this is that, and you're here and you're there and so forth. It's much more defined because it involves the ego. But in phase 2, it's altruism without self-benefit. So the idea is that you're not even meant to get self-benefit to your advancement. You're just meant to be sort of like groping in the dark, and that's the way it's meant to be.
Right, and want the other to advance. That's right, yeah.
Yeah, but so contradictory because we are taught too to demand the reward, which to me would be the advancement, right?
But the idea is that when they say demand a reward, they don't actually tell you what the reward you're meant to demand. Again, the idea of phase 2 is to sort of give you the dirty concepts. They're meant to give you different concepts that it's not that they have to be dirty in themselves, but the idea is that they talk in a language that is vague enough that when it comes into your perception, because you have an immature perception at that phase, you think you know what they're talking about, even though you actually have no clue. So they talk about bestowal, they talk about connection, they talk about love. All these words are words that have a mature description and an immature description. And people just sort of think, oh, I must know what it means. So when they hear the word love, they think loving means giving from yourself and giving to others. And that's the immature definition of love. And the mature definition of love is controlling somebody by giving them the illusion of free will. So the idea is that if someone's hearing about love in immature perception, they're going to think, oh, what I have to do is I have to, think of how I'm going to give my stuff to others and give either my emotion or give my property or possessions or money and so forth. When you reach mature perception, you don't actually have to give anything, but rather you have to sort of imply a sense of control and actually give a supportive environment that controls many factors, but still gives the illusion that they actually have the freedom to do whatever they want. So the idea is that in phase 2, they talk in a very general way. Like, for example, they say the creator is good, but don't actually define what is good. They say the creator is bestowal. They don't actually define what is bestowal. So the idea is they say the words, but don't give the definitions. And because people are basically born into an immature perception, they have no way of verifying whether their definition is the same as somebody else's definition. In phase 3, in the group, what we do is we actually try to align to a single language so that when we say love, everybody understands and everyone has the common definition of what the mature definition of love is, and so forth.
Yeah, I enjoy that.
The article at the end says that all phases up to this point are experienced passively, without any required participation or knowledge from the individual to advance. And is that up to phase 2.2, or when does it switch to actively?
So the idea is you get your passive point in the heart from 1.3, and it sort of stays with you until 2.2. And then in 2.3, that's when you get the active point in the heart. And the difference is that with the passive point in the heart, it's basically the posterior of power, which is basically the meaning of life. And that's what you basically deal with from 1.3 to 2.2, is that you don't actually solve anything, but rather you need to learn and understand why things are happening. And that is meant to give you pleasure. And if you're in that passive sort of state, that's perfectly fine. That meaning of life will sort of satisfy you and satiate you. But when you get your active point in the heart, then the meaning of life you don't care about very much. And now you actually want power over your life. You don't want to be told why your life sucks. Now you want to make your life better. So it requires a active participation. You first feel it as a deficiency, just like when you get your passive point in the heart, you feel it as some lack. And then you go through the phase that you understand that you have to clean your concepts to actually have an active participation. So for example, in phase 2, when they say, oh, you don't have to do anything, the light reforms you, they think that they can just wait and some light will come and reform them. The mature definition of the light reforms is more like when we say, I take the bus to New York, that, what, you're carrying the bus? It's like, no, I go to the bus stop. I go onto the bus takes me to New York. But because I'm sort of starting the operation, I can name the operation after me. So even though the bus takes me to New York, I can say I'm taking the bus to New York. So the same thing with the light that reforms. I can either say that the light reforms me, or I can say that I'm reforming myself using the light. Because the idea is that what a person needs to do is collect discernments. And the result of those discernments will be advancement that the light does reform you. But the problem is that people don't know about the discernment collecting, or even if they hear about it, sometimes they'll just ignore it. And they expect a passive experience where I'll just wait, I'll do some actions and stuff, I'll do connections, workshops, and listen to lesson. And the magic light is meant to reform me. What they don't understand is that in that process of doing all that stuff, they have to collect the discernments of how the creator controls, manipulates us, gives us patterns of common behavior. By collecting those, then the light reforms us.
Question on the mutual guarantee. I don't know if we could also relate mutual guarantee as a way of controlling. For example, like the definition of love that you gave. Could that be the same at some point with mutual guarantee?
That's the same idea with mutual guarantee. So the mutual guarantee is to provide an environment where each person is trying to control as much of the experience that he can, but without giving the sensation to others as if he's taking control. And it requires to be very nuanced in the way you interact with the group, where you sort of try your best to sort of implement your desires and sort of your point of view on things, but without giving the other members the feeling that you're taking away their control. And the idea is to reach a point, like think of end of a correction where everyone's manipulating each other. It's like symbiotic control, where each one feels that they own the entire world and that they're manipulating everybody else, but they're doing in a way that doesn't negate the feeling of control that others have as well. So the idea is that you reach a point where everyone feels that sense of control without negating anybody else's sense of control. So each person has the whole control, like I'm controlling everything, without negating that same experience for other people. When I talk with people about cleaning concepts, one of the first concepts I actually normally talk to them about is the concept of love. And normally the conversation goes like, what is love? And they'll give some kind of response of giving to somebody else. And then I'm like, that's the immature definition. The mature definition is to control someone without giving them the feeling that you're controlling them, by giving them the sensation of freedom. And then the first example that I use is the creator. The creator controls us 100%, but he gives us the illusion of freedom. Parents with children, the parents love their children, right? They control their environment. They define what food they can have, what computer stuff they can access, their friends, their neighborhood, the school. They define so much of their environment, but they give the children a sensation as if they can do whatever they want, even though they're in a controlled environment. So that's another example of love. And the same goes with between people, a spouse, where the idea is that each one should try to implement as much control of the environment to help each other. But the idea is to do it in a way that doesn't give the other person the feeling of limitation, that they're being controlled. And it really requires a lot of practice and experience to know how to do this in such a manner that you can get maximum control, but with maximum the illusion of free will.
I was wondering if there would not be any kind of conflict, because you see at some stages it's like, well, you can handle love and your spouse perhaps, or some relationship with your kids, your sons, but at some point I don't know if it would be so much stressful that it would create conflict on the same topic, on mutual guarantee.
So the idea is to take it from external control to internal control. Right? So the idea is not to sort of dictate when people can come and when people can leave. That would be external control. Rather, the idea is to get internal power. What internal power allows you to do is to affect the desires of others through expression. Right? That's called the secrets of the Torah, where the idea is that you can actually have an effect on other people's desires, and then think of a world where everyone's affecting each other's desires, but doing it consciously. So the idea is we currently do it subconsciously. The idea is to reach the point where actually we're doing it consciously. But the idea is that the other person doesn't actually feel that they're being manipulated. So the idea is everyone's manipulating each other without them feeling it, and therefore everyone is living in the illusion of free will, even though everyone's controlling each other.
Yeah, and we're taught the concept of that your desires should become my desires, but they don't tell you that your desires should become my desires so I can influence them.
Exactly, and those are the secrets.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
You get a taste of it in 2.2 after the barrier, which is called greatness in the world of deficiencies. Then you lose it in breaking the vessels, but then you get it back towards the end of correction.
That's like authentic kumbaya, right? It's not lip service kumbaya.
Exactly.
Well, like you say, this does highlight the importance, the vital importance of the phase 2 society. Because this is where we're getting all these basic concepts, and then we clean it. We're polishing the gem in phase 3, the way I see it, right?
Part of the problem is if you don't have a phase 2 and you only have a phase 3, you basically sort of run out of dirty clothes. Think of phase 2 as a supplier of dirty clothes. They provide you with concepts in such a big fashion that they activate within you your immature perception of those concepts. Then you come to the phase 3 group and they say, you misunderstood. It's actually this. But if you don't come with dirty clothes, then what's the point of the detergent? So phase 3 is the detergent. And what does the detergent need? Dirty clothes. It doesn't need clean clothes. It needs dirty clothes to actually apply the detergent and clean those concepts. So if you don't have a phase 2 and don't have a place where you're actually coming with the dirty concepts, then phase 3 is useless, because what's the point of cleaning concepts if you don't have any dirty ones? So the idea is that at the beginning, when we come to the spiritual society, we actually expect them to provide filling, which is fine when we have a passive point in the heart. But when we get our active point in the heart, the spiritual society become a place of deficiencies, and then phase 3 becomes our filling.
This is so true. I get such great filling here. And phase 4, my interaction with my friends in this phase is on top of that.
You're meant to get filling. You're meant to enjoy it. If you're not enjoying it, you're not going to advance. So you need to enjoy the path of advancement. But
I certainly do.
You have to get the
blows and
deficiencies.
all. I'm still getting my blows. right? I did some wrong arithmetic with a client the other day. I gave him $5 too much change. I just sucked it up, go on to the next horse, right?
So it is most of those blows you can actually get from outside of the group and
yeah.
inside the group. And it is to actually reduce you could say the tension and conflict within the group, because that's not where the tension is meant to come from. The tension is meant to come from either externally, but even that is preferred to sort of reduce that to the minimum.
Well, this is,
most
if
of the
there's a feeling at BB, if there's a feeling at BB within the groups, there is a lot of tension and conflict, and that I thought was always counterproductive. I'm not sure about what's the cause of that. The people are still bringing like a phase one mentality into the phase two.
Yes, yeah, that's normally what happens.
Because a lot of people told me that's what turns them off. I mean, I've been in numerous groups, and at some point somebody gets a wild bug up their butt, and we're not focused on the goal or anything anymore. The kumbaya like gets weakened, all that.
All right, I think we'll stop here and enter the after party.